My name is Xuedong Bu, and my advisor is Dr. Wu Tingting. And today my topic is teachers' capacity for organizational learning, the effects of school culture and context. 作者是 Louis K.S.、Louis Karen Seashore， 还有 Lee Monson 他的 DOI 是10.1080.09.2453.2016.1189437 JCR 类别是 Educational Research， 领域排名是243名的前86，然后领域分级是 Q2。Abstract. The paper investigates how key elements of school culture are associated with teachers' capacity to find and act on new information. We analyzed survey data from 3,579 teachers located in 117 schools, which were a randomly selected sample from 9 states in the U.S. We also found that the role of teacher professional culture in molding the capacity for organizational learning is critical. In terms of school context, we identified that school level, elementary, middle, and high school, was associated with teachers' capacity for organizational learning in 2 different ways. First, as the school level increases, the capacity for organizational learning tends to decrease. We found that school cultural components, such as academic press, student support, and trust and respect among teachers, promote teachers' capacity for organizational learning. Second, as school level increases, the positive relation between reflective dialogue and teachers' capacity for organizational learning is weakened. Implications of these results are discussed. Introduction. A long tradition in educational research points to organizational culture as a key variable for understanding school change and improvement. As early as the 1930s, sociologists suggested that typical school cultures constrain efforts to innovate. Seminal work claimed that schools could not change significantly unless basic elements of their culture, such as assumptions about how adults control their classrooms, were challenged. According to Agris, was that professionals in schools were programmed to ignore new information that challenged their existing practices. With this observation, Agris identified a central problem for improving schools that has become increasingly important over the last decades. It is the connection between school culture and the school's capacity to attend to the incorporate new information that is the focus of the paper. This paper investigates how key elements of school culture that have been shown in the empirical literature to be linked with positive student outcomes are associated with organizational learning. This paper aims to identify important school contexts that shape organizational learning at a school level, elementary, middle, and high school. In sum, this paper addresses 2 questions. How does the culture of a school, as reflected in organized patterns of teachers' beliefs, assumptions, and behaviors, contribute to their capacity for organizational learning? Second, how does a school's context affect organizational learning and also moderate the association between internal culture and organizational learning? Review of literature. Information, knowledge, and school improvement. 2 overlapping but distinct lines of research feed into current ideas about how information may lead to educational improvement, database decision-making, and organizational learning. Bayer and Trace and Weiss distinguished between the use of knowledge for instrumental purposes to solve a problem or make a decision, and conceptual purposes to enlighten and suggest new ways of thinking about an issue, practice, or other phenomenon. The DBDM line of research in education tends to reflect the first type of use, while OL is associated with the second. We know that trust and respect among adults in school are positively associated with teachers being capable of learning collectively across various organizational layers and boundaries. In terms of school context, the conventional contextual variables of school size and student poverty level have a limited association with teachers' capacity for organizational learning. Most of the emphasis in the DBDM literature is on the use of data for instrumental purposes, ranging from diagnosing why some students are not performing well, or what learning goals should be targeted, to identifying specific grade level, strengths and weaknesses. In education, a major focus has been on politics and leadership behaviors that promote teachers' use of data about student learning to improve instructional practices. As a consequence, change or innovation in organizational practices emerges as a result of incremental decisions rather than strategic efforts to solve a problem. Our perspective in the paper is closely aligned with this assumption. Organizational learning incorporates the idea that learning is associated with continuous improvement. In a school setting, this typically means frequent and deliberate adjustments of classroom practice in response to new ideas, rather than major strategic reorientation. Among the outcomes of the organizational learning processes outlined above is change orientation. All school stakeholders are actively seeking to improve both the content and the rate at which learning occurs, by being oriented towards group learning. In addition, continuous improvement culture assumes a long-term commitment or the willingness and ability to see beyond the year-to-year fluctuations that schools typically encounter to stay in compliance with the accountability requirements. Finally, as noted above, it assumes that OL requires paying attention to the implications of new information or knowledge for changes in practice, including using quantitative or qualitative evidence as a basis for classroom and building decisions. Organizational culture and capacity for organization learning. According to Shin, culture reflects the group's consensus about the means of problem solving and interacting with those both inside and outside the organization. It is also those elements of group or organization that are most stable and least malleable. The deeper meaning of culture extends beyond defined behaviors of people in an organization. Culture also consists of chunks of knowledge that organizational members share, conceptual structures that define their reality, and their learned and transmitted norms. Our analysis is predicted on the assumption that processes associated with the capacity for organizational learning are more likely to be present in some organizational cultures than in others. Most studies of organizational learning assume that it occurs either during or as a consequence of collaborative interactions with others in the work context. One study of adaptive work behavior found, for example, that learning changing practices occur because people were watching, noticing, trying to doing, in a variety of different contexts, using no fixed procedures. In schools, this may mean conversations with colleagues, observations by peers, or administrators' feedback from students, reading, interactions with an expert coach, and other quasi-predictable activities. Group learning includes not only processes, but also cultural norms such as collaboration, reflection, and willingness to try new things, take collective risks. These cultural norms can have a substantial impact on the ability of any organization to manage and make use of knowledge. Research on school culture has often been driven by pressure to find cultural features of schools that are effective in producing student achievement. The empirical basis for determining what school cultures may be most effective is, in spite of a relatively extended period in which attention has been paid to it, limited, with many competing frameworks that often examine only one specific feature of a school's culture. Recent research has integrated variables that are associated with students' achievement across many studies, and point to an increasing consensus about the cultural attributes of effective schools. The degree to which a school gives clear priority to academic standards and creates a sense of importance among both staff and students around the academic achievement is, not surprisingly, shown to be an important predictor of student achievement in a number of studies. Academic support for students. The school improvement literature has long emphasized the need for pressure and support for students has been connected to student engagement and achievement, but as Marx, Scan, and Dong. Academic support has since been an element of many of the comprehensive school reform models, and has been shown to be related to achievement in more recent studies. Discussion. Results indicate that core aspects of school culture as perceived by teachers, such as academic press, academic support for students, and trust and respect, matter for teachers' capacity for organizational learning. This suggests that providing clear priority to academic standards, setting high standards for academic performance, assessment practices reflecting curriculum standards, and promoting a sense of importance among staff around academic achievement, setting clear learning expectations for all students, are positively associated with teachers' capacity for organizational learning in school, which supports the studies reviewed earlier. Also, allocating resources and learning opportunities, coherent instructional programs, to students aligned with their needs, is positively associated with teachers' capacity for organizational learning. The role of teachers' culture in shaping their capacity for organizational learning appears to be highly important. Of the three variables representing different dimensions of professional community, shared responsibility, reflective dialogues, and deprivatized practices were more significant predictors of organizational learning than academic press, academic support for students, and trust and respect. This seems to be because the three dimensions of how teachers relate to each other in the school are the organizational backbone where collective interactions for professional learning begin to form, which in turn is inextricably intertwined with teachers' capacity for organizational learning. The association of school level with teachers' capacity for organizational learning is further complicated with the moderating effect of school level on the relation between reflective dialogue and organizational learning. Drawing on the cross-level interaction model, we found that as school level increases, the positive relation between reflective dialogue and organizational learning is weakened. Conclusion. Our findings affirm that trust is an important component of school culture and that can lead to increased capacity for organizational learning. We suggest that more research is needed to consider the role that it plays in developing a more supportive, caring, and effective school environment. In other words, how trust is related to other components of school culture and organizational learning. The relative importance of trust is also notable because this is one of the first studies in which trust is examined in the context of other variables that measure culture. Our findings affirm that trust is an important component of school culture that can lead to increased capacity for organizational learning. Second, our study also demonstrates that school levels is an important school context that is associated with teachers' capacity for organizational learning, whereas conventional school contexts such as size and poverty have limited association with teachers' capacity for organizational learning.